Yes, everyone should go to therapy because everyone is going through a traumatic experience. One of the ways to get out of doing a habit that you're used to doing over and over and over again is to change your physiological, your body, to change it. Therapy doesn't have to be sitting in front of a doctor and them saying, interesting, and then writing down their notes. And then next thing you know, you're in the psych ward. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be like, that's the coolest thing.
I think one thing people forget is like, you need to find what's right for you.
Yeah.
So what's right for you may not be sitting on someone's couch divulging all that information. What might be right for you is writing down what you're going through in lyrics.
Yeah.
Or dancing or listening to music or whatever. That might be right for you.
Welcome to the 1024, where we talk about love, finance, and anything in between. We're your hosts, Brian
and Dr. Sam.
And today we're going to be talking about how to work on yourself inside the relationship. So this is going to be a good one because we both have started off this relationship knowing that we're growth-minded and wanting to improve ourselves, but also improve the relationship at the same time. So what's something that you do intentionally inside of the relationship to grow?
I think my main thing that I've talked about several times is the fact that I go to therapy. And I think that is super important because I come with a lot of
baggage.
I come with a lot of trauma and a lot of past relationships that didn't go well. And I didn't want to project that into my current relationship. Plus, I think it's always good to have a unbiased opinion on certain things that happen within the relationship and have someone that's like not so invested in the relationship where they're giving a sided or swayed opinion about what's happening.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty cool that you did that. I think that everyone, like, people don't realize how much trauma they actually have. But everyone has trauma. I have not yet met somebody that has said, "Oh, my upbringing was just amazing. Like, my parents were absolutely awesome. I never went through any painful situations, and I'm just living the dream." Like, I've never met somebody to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool that you were able to say, like, "Look, we're all fucked up. My situation specifically is fucked up. Let me go ahead and get therapy and talk to somebody about my problems, so I can at least balance myself in the future relationship." I think that's a pretty good foresight and insight to like your character and like who you are. So that's a pretty cool thing. For myself, I definitely did not do that. Like therapy, it's weird because it's a juxtaposition for me. For me, it's like, yes, everyone should go to therapy because everyone is going through a traumatic experience. But at the same time, I believe that therapy is a single way to get something done, right? So it's like, what I mean by that is like therapy can be music or therapy can be writing and therapy can be like different things. And you don't necessarily need to talk and divulge all of your private information to somebody to get better, in my opinion. But at the same time, I know that actually it probably would help you if you did it. So I'm actually looking for a therapist now, because somebody that is next to me that is looking at me saying, say the right thing to your people, because they're definitely going to be upset if you don't.
No, I think
sitting next to me.
I think there's dance movement therapy. There's music therapy that is all parts of therapy. The part that I use is talk therapy. So that's the part that I think is beneficial to me. But there are other forms of therapy that you can use if you feel as though that's a better way to help you cope and help you learn. So I think people are just used to talk therapy, but there's other forms of therapy you can use as well.
Yeah, because, and it's not that I, like I said, I believe in therapy. Like I do. I think that it helps people more than hurts people. For myself, like in a previous episode, my upbringing was, I'm doing this on my own. I don't need anybody else. Right. So then it's kind of the opposite from my mindset when I go to therapy, because it's like, I need you to help me sort this out for me. And that goes completely against my belief system. So it's difficult for me to be like, hey, let me do this to be able to improve myself, because that's not what I believe. So like I tend to be like, okay, well, if I tend to do research, like I tend to look up things like this is helpful, this is helpful, this is helpful. And I'm like, let's try this, let's try that. And that's kind of how I work it into the relationship. There's so many things that we have done independently outside of therapy that has improved our relationship. But I still feel like there's a large missing point, especially with like communication, because that's like my biggest thing that I need to get a better handle on. And those types of things are the things that kind of set me back. And I can feel it's like a bottleneck. Like I'm doing a little bit, but it's not enough. So if talk therapy, do you think talk therapy is the most effective form of therapy for the masses?
I don't know. I think it actually depends on what you're going to therapy for. So I feel like if you're going to therapy because you need someone to hear what you're saying, you need someone to listen to you, then talk therapy is that thing. But I feel like some people use dance movement therapy or music therapy as a way to release that energy of trauma when they don't have the words to say. So I think it really is, it depends on what you're going to therapy for. I think the masses are used to talk therapy and don't recognize that there are other forms of therapy. I worked in a health center where we did music therapy and dance movement therapy, which people were not used to. And we had to explain to them what those things were. But it was because people were used to just talk therapy. There's other forms of therapy out there.
Yeah. What like dance therapy?
Yeah, it's dancing out your emotions. Like I think I told you about like shaking, how shaking like releases
Parkinson's.
Babe. How shaking releases energy from your body.
Yeah.
And like they talk about your body's defense mechanism or coping mechanism when you're nervous is to shake. And it's a way to comfort you. So like shaking is a way to release that energy or release that tension. And so dancing is also a way to release that energy or release that tension. Like when you're in a happy mood and you're dancing around your house, you feel good.
Yeah.
Like that's the basis of it. Like you're dancing to feel good. You're dancing to release that tension. You're dancing to release that trauma. So that's what they use as a form of therapy.
Yeah, I joke, but I'm 100% sure that's effective. 100% sure. Like, and the reason is because like I've done research also. And one of the ways to get out of doing a habit that you're used to doing over and over and over again is to change your physiological, your body, to change it. If you're feeling down and upset, if you, pose in a confident stance and do something that a confident person would do, like out of the blue, like if I start barking, you could be like, hey, he's crazy or he's fucking confident. Like there's no in between. It's like that guy's just scared. Like, no, like you don't
I think most people would say he's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think barking is like confidence. Like I don't know.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Like if you're a Q, maybe, but other than that.
What if I'm a Q? What's a Q?
A Q is a fraternity.
Oh, I thought you meant like queer or
no, if you are part of a fraternity,
like LGBTQ. If you're a Q,
no.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I think that is actually very effective, probably. But so the type of people that go to dance therapy are people that are what? Are they scared, or are they like socially awkward?
No, the people that go to the dance therapy
or they just love dancing.
No, they recognize that there's unconventional ways to get therapy. They recognize, like, the people that went to dance therapy at my health center were folks that loved to dance, loved music, talk therapy. Some of them actually did talk therapy also, but they also recognized there were other forms of therapy that they wanted to utilize or tap into. So they were like, hey, let me dance it out. I love dancing. And a lot of them were like, it released so much from your body. You might not tackle, like I said, the reason is important. So you might not tackle that exact, all the reasons, but you're able to tackle one of the reasons, whether it's like I have tension in my body and I just want to release it, or I've experienced like, this trauma, because trauma forms in your body and it lives in your body. So like dancing it out in that movement also helps as well, instead of just, talking about it.
That's actually a really good point. It's cool because therapy doesn't have to be sitting in front of a doctor and them saying, interesting, and then writing down their notes. And the next thing you know, you're in the psych ward. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be like, that's the coolest thing. Like, I feel like if therapy was marketed in the way that you're saying, where it's like, hey, you could do whatever you want. Like, you know, you could dance, you could write poems, you could do like you could do this and that. Like, people would hop on board because like, this is like a hobby now. Like, I love doing this. This is awesome. And also it's going to fix a lot of my trauma and my past experiences. Why wouldn't I do this?
A couple of my therapists suggested journaling. A couple of my therapists, I have a coloring book, and that's another way I go through, cope with things that are happening. I love to have dance parties, like at my house. You are never really invited because it's a solo thing.
I have singing parties in the shower, and then everywhere else.
I was about to say, you have singing parties everywhere. This is not has nothing. It's not.
I might start singing right now.
It's not only for the shower, but like those things have been suggested to me by my talk therapist. So like they recognize that there's other forms than just like sitting in front of somebody sitting on a couch, because I think that's like what I call it, like Eurocentric. So that's like what is
something weird.
Eurocentric.
Oh, they said you're eccentric. I was like, what the hell?
No, Eurocentric, like really focused on like conventional ways of therapy, which is talk therapy. So like this is going outside of the box and realizing there's different cultural norms that we may have. Like dancing, it may not be part of someone's culture, but it's helped other people in other cultures. Yeah. Or like writing poetry. I worked with a faculty member that helped youth write raps, and that was their way of therapy. Yeah. So like there's multiple ways that you can engage in therapy, not just sitting in front of someone and just talking it out.
I love that. And you're mentioning on cultural differences, but it's not just cultural differences. It's really men. Men don't tend to like being vulnerable in that way. They don't like be like, okay, like I'm gonna have a therapist, whether it's a girl or a guy, I'm not gonna want to be vulnerable to this other person.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but still what men tend to do is they tend to suppress whatever they're going through or they've been through. And then they wind up lashing out in their everyday life and then affecting the people around them. So if you could say, hey, you're going to write a rap or whatever, but the specific reason you're writing a rap is to use it as an outlet. If it has a goal, if it's allocated to a specific thing, like this is something that I want to fix in myself and I want to heal. And if you're looking at it like that, I think it makes a big difference.
I did group therapy, and like part of that group therapy was like each week we gave them a journaling prompt, and that journaling prompt was very helpful. And I think it might be different, like you said, if it's like a different population where that cultural thing is, you know, to write songs or to write poetry or to write rap. I think one thing people forget is like you need to find what's right for you. So what's right for you may not be sitting on someone's couch divulging all that information. What might be right for you is writing down what you're going through in lyrics, or dancing or listening to music or whatever. That might be right for you. But I think at times we like to put therapy into a box, and we're just like, I don't want to do this talking in front of someone about what's going on in my life, so I'm not going to do it at all. But not recognizing there's all these other things that you can be doing instead.
Yeah. I think that me growing up, I had anger issues, apparently. And well, it wasn't really anger issues. Like I beat up a racist kid, and they're like, "Oh, you're an anger. You got to go on anger management." I'm like, "Yeah, but he deserved it." But anyway, so I had to see this counselor. And it was this like big fat guy that had like slick black hair. He looked like a sloppy salesman. And he was sat down with me, and he's like, so you got some anger issues. I'm like, do I? And he's like, yeah, well, you're going to be doing this for about 6 months. So I'm like, okay, I guess I do. And so we would just talk, and I don't remember one thing being a monumental shift in my life at that point. Like, I don't feel like maybe he wasn't good at his job. Maybe he didn't care. I don't know what the situation is, but I know it wasn't effective, right? But back then, I decided to make rap music, and I created songs, and I thought that I was doing that just because it was fun. But then I look back at some of the songs, I'm like, damn, I was going through some shit. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was like I was using it as an outlet. Like, this was my life. This is the world that I saw. So I was like, the things that were on top of my head just poured out. You know, and that became something that I became more content and more accepting of my situation because of that. And I think that was why I kind of also had that mindset where it's like, do I really need to sit in front of somebody to help me? Do I really need that? Or can I just figure it out myself? And I think that that's where I came with that. But not everybody is like that. Like I said, my blueprint is like, I'm thinking about myself and myself and myself, right? And then with you, it's like other people or something that's important to you, external. You know what I'm saying? So it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that therapy can be in different forms is not really known. I don't think that most people, I think most people think of the therapy in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, I just like you. Not that I thought I had anger issues. I did have anger issues as a child, or assumed, or whatever. And journaling was really helpful for me. Like being able to write down my thoughts, write down what I was going through was super helpful, because I felt as though there were very limited people I can talk to, because my parents were really known in the church. And so I couldn't talk to anybody else outside in the church about what I was going through. And then folks outside of the church obviously wouldn't really understand what was happening. So I journaled a lot. And it wasn't until I had to deal with my anxiety disorder that's when I started going to therapy. And then I recognized therapy can help me in other parts of my life. Right now, I don't go to my therapist. Me and her don't talk about my anxiety disorder. We talk about so much other things within my life, because I've seen the benefit of being able to have that unbiased opinion. I don't journal as much as I would love to, but I still find that beneficial, and another way to have therapy as well.
If I'm being honest, I think therapy needs a serious rebrand.
You've told me that, yeah.
No, I really do, because it seems like, even with me saying like, oh, I don't think I need therapy, that's really because I'm looking at it as therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't need somebody to solve my problems. But what if it was like, oh, I just want to have somebody I could talk to just as a friend, to always just like bounce some ideas off of.
All right.
Like, hell yeah, I love that. You know what I mean? That's completely different. And that puts me in a completely different mindset. So like, I'm like, wow, like if you said, hey, do you want to make music and just talk about your issues? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do that. And if you stop calling it therapy and just say like, hey, do you want to do this to help? It's like, it makes it completely different.
Yeah, that's true. I think therapy comes with a stigma and comes with taboo, where people have for a very long time thought of therapy as something that is only for people who are mentally ill. I recognize that I have no stigma behind it. So it's very easy for me to go to therapy whenever I need therapy. But I also recognize that there is a stigma within the Black community and outside the Black community, where therapy is viewed as, you have a problem. And not like a problem, like everyday problem. There's something mentally wrong with you. You're crazy. And that's why you need to go to therapy. And so people try to avoid therapy, and also don't recognize there's a whole host of other things that are classified as quote unquote therapy.
Yeah, I think that the older generation looks at it like that. I don't look at it like that. Like, I don't look at it to that extreme where it's like, oh, you're crazy if you go to therapy. Like, I think therapy is beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, I don't think it's beneficial for me to do in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I look at it like it's going to look at Christmas lights.
So let's just say I am in love with Christmas, and I happen to date someone that is the Grinch, and I
am not the Grinch.
I have to really sit with this and think about it for a very long time. Christmas lights are amazing, but continue.
It's something that I can do, that people would be happy if I did it, but it doesn't do anything for me. That's how I look at doing therapy. Okay. But I do know that it's going to affect the relationship in a positive way if I just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good analogy. I don't know. I'm going to have to pat myself on the back with that one. That was pretty good.
Christmas lights, for bringing up the Christmas lights?
It's very synonymous, yes. But yeah, like if you would have, like if it had nothing to do with therapy, and I don't know why I want to get rid of the therapy word. If it was like healing, like if you wanted to heal, that would be more like, okay, not clinical.
Yeah, I think that's where things are going towards now, like radical healing or healing and things like that. Like the support group that I did, it was we did call it healing. We didn't call it therapy. I think people came there with the intent of how do I learn to heal from my past traumas?
Yeah.
And so the support of others was part of it. Journaling was part of it. Being able to set goals was part of it. And that was all therapeutic. It was all therapy, right?
Right. Yeah, because you can go through therapy without calling it therapy.
Right.
And you probably should. Right. Because if you're going through therapy, there might be a part of you that's like, hey, I need to get some medication. Hey, I need to, I'm probably kind of like mentally ill and I'm depressed because of that. Like it kind of creates a different internal struggle by calling it therapy, I feel like.
So I didn't get onto medication until 6 years after I was in therapy. So I don't think necessarily folks push medication onto folks or have people thinking they need to be medicated. I think just how we frame therapy, and like I said, like it's been very beneficial for me while working in this relationship to be able to talk to someone who has an unbiased opinion, because my friends are very not one-sided. They're able to tell me when I fucked up, but also they are very much on my side. So my friends are still going to be swayed somehow and present things like, girl, he was wrong. And I was like, exactly, absolutely. And then my therapist was like, well, if you look at it on this side, I could see why Brian would think X, Y, and Z. And
There's
I'm just
been so many times that the therapist has been on my side. I'm like, I like this lady.
God.
I might have to sign up for therapy. These people make a lot of sense. I might have to become a therapist myself.
You're like, she's good. And I'm like, yeah, because she agreed with you. But it's because she's very unbiased and she makes me think of things. She has a different perspective.
Right.
I think my friends may have one perspective, but she has a perspective of like a clinician, but also she's viewed or been experienced so many other relationships. So where she can be like, oh, I've seen this several times play out in other relationships, and give that type of advice and type of knowledge that I don't think your friends would be able to give you, because they're coming from like their own experience and their own bias.
It's a skewed perception.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because when you're talking to a therapist, I always wonder, I'm like, well, what are you going through? Like, you know, like I always look like, I'm like, I know that I'm going through this shit, but what are you going through? Like, I like, you're a professional.
My
but
therapist, I feel like let me know at one point that she was going through marital problems. And I was just like, I'm not going, I'm not going to dig deep into that situation, but it sounds like homegirl going through it.
Yeah.
But I think, they always say a therapist needs therapy. Like a therapist needs their own therapist, because it not only do you have to think, you have to go through what other people are going through, you have to go through your own personal shit as well.
Yeah, but I can imagine like also like you're taking in everyone else's energy,
right?
All their trauma, you're taking that in. So like you have to unpack that somehow,
right?
You're gonna be holding that in, and then it's gonna explode in your relationship. Like you have to unpack it. So you almost are obligated to see a therapist at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's true. I think that it's interesting because I feel like when you go to therapy and you talk to the person, it's almost like a part of you has left. like what I mean is like, it's like you're giving a part of you away to somebody that you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're talking to the stranger and you're both sitting there. And like, for me, I'm like, all right, well, are we just going to waste our time looking at each other, or are we going to talk? And then like, it's always me talking first about something. And I'm like, so this is something I want to talk about. And then they're like, And then, they go through the whole thing. And
you've had some shitty therapists.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think every therapy session where I've started, the first thing that we go through is like psychosocial evaluation. So they go through all of the things, all the, checkoffs. Have you been sexually assaulted? Have you been in an abusive relationship? How was your parents?
So for me, that's like a checklist.
Yeah.
Like it's like a piece of paper that I have to sign.
And, they don't
like
talk to you about it.
They don't talk to me about it. They look at it and they're like, okay, looks good.
Yeah, we've always talked about it, and then at the very end they asked me, and what things do you want to focus on? What are your goals for this therapy session? And then that's when I'm like, I would really like to work on making sure my partner can get his life right.
Okay. They'll be like, "Who's your partner, Brian?" They're like, "He's got it. Like
He's got it all
made.
together.
You must be the issue,
you don't
ma'am."
need to worry about that. Your partner has it together. Now the next thing you want to work on. But like they normally, and then after they've gone through that list, they normally invite you to talk about things they want to talk that you want to talk about.
Okay.
And sometimes my therapist, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, she asked me, she was like, "I think we really need to talk about this topic. Do you feel comfortable steering towards this topic? Because I think this is a foundation of what's happening or what's causing your trauma for a whole bunch of things in your life." And I was just like,
wow,
okay, let's dive into this topic that I've been avoiding.
I think that's amazing. Like that's such a cool thing. It's like the way I look at it is like, imagine you had like 5 friends, right? And most people have 5 friends, but like imagine those 5 friends gave you just unbiased advice on how to improve your life, just without anything that they need from you. You know, it's just they're just giving completely like gold mines of information, a wealth of knowledge, and you're just taking it all in, and then you're getting a constant criticism, constant advice, and that will make you a better person.
Yeah.
There's no way it can't.
Yeah. I think since I started therapy with my new therapist, I think I started in August or September of last year. And when it comes to like relationships, my past therapist, I felt like I didn't talk to her about relationships. I really talked to her about, I was in my PhD program at that time, and I just talked to her solely about my academics. But this person, I feel like I can talk to about literally everything, like from my job to my relationships to my childhood, and she's able to be that not a voice of reason, but like that other perspective
Advocate
that I need. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, that's definitely good.
You want to sign up for therapy?
I don't know. Like, cause like, I'm like, for me, I'm like, yes, but at the same time, I'm like, am I deluding myself?
Deluding yourself? How?
Yeah, like you're like, yeah, it's good to have a friend that's always going to be there and talk to you about just whatever comes to mind. But at the same time, when I sit down with a person, they're like, interesting. Write it down and just like take a log of information and be like, I think you need some pills.
No, you need to, I think, just like when you are going to buy a car, you need to shop around and find what's best suited for you.
How do you, like, that's the big thing. Because I've had probably, I think, 2 therapists that have done the same thing. That they're like writing stuff down and they're just like, interesting. Want some pills? And it's like that. And I'm like, fuck this. Like, and they're not very helpful. So it's like, how do you find a good therapist rather than just finding just your Joe Schmo therapist that doesn't really care? They're just in it for a paycheck.
So I've had in my lifetime a total of 4 therapists. My first therapist I didn't like because she was forcing me to have emotions that I didn't have. Okay. She really wanted me to be angry about certain situations that I was not angry about. Okay. My second therapist, he was cool, but he was a white male, and I felt like we couldn't connect in certain ways. I could talk to him about everything. Actually, I reserved talking to him about everything. I was like, certain things he doesn't know what I'm talking about. My third therapist was an older Black woman, and I felt as though her age made her feel more motherly than anything else. And then with my fourth therapist, I was very intentional. I was like, I need to find a Black woman, because my first one was trying to have me mad at people I didn't need to be mad at. Yeah. My second one, I felt like I couldn't tell him anything. My third one, I felt like she was my mother. And this person, I need someone around my age, and I need her to be Black, and I need her to be a woman. That's
an incredible point. I think that's a really good point, because like for somebody that's not sure if they want to go to therapy, like someone that's on the fence and they're looking into therapists, my biggest issue is like when I start looking at therapists, I'm like, I don't know, like how do I pick between you and you? Like I have no idea. And then they have letters behind their name, and I'm like, okay, does this mean you just have more education? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are you going to be more focused on the prescription side of things? Or are you going to be more focused on helping me? Like I don't know I don't know if you're good, or I don't know what makes you good. Right. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that. Like if I knew that I could sit down right now with somebody that is like a cool person that gets life, that understands what I'm going through, and has had, a history of people that have gone through the same things, and they're just giving me golden nuggets to figure it out. that's Yahtzee. Like, you know, everybody, like you're just like this is
That's
exactly what
Yahtzee.
I want. Like I'm just saying, like that's you're scoring then. Like you found the person. But I don't think most people go into getting therapy as a reflection, right? That's the thing that I picked up from you is like when you're looking for your therapist, you shouldn't just be picking one and just
Right.
going with them.
Right.
You should be like, what exactly do I need here?
Right.
Like, what kind of person do I need? And if it's not that person, are you going to settle for less? Right? Because you went through, you said 4 people before you found the one.
Right.
So I have to expect that. Like, I shouldn't just go through one person and be like, this is the guy I'm stuck with.
Right.
You know, you have to actually be intentional of who you're picking out, who you're seeking out, just like you would if you were seeking out a friend.
Right. Like I said, like a car or a partner, like you're dating your therapist. You're finding out.
Wait. You're dating your therapist?
Shout out to Darlene. Hey,
I always
girl.
knew you were gay.
Wow.
It's just a matter of time. You heard it first on the 1024.
You did not hear it
Dr.
first.
Sam Ware.
You did not hear it first in the 1024. You certainly did not. Yeah, it's really like you're dating someone, right? You have a checklist of what you're looking for and why you wanted to seek therapy. So it's like I wanted to seek therapy because I knew I was transitioning in life. I knew I was coming back to where I had grown up. I knew I was going to be in a new career setting. And I also knew I wanted to start dating. So I was like, I need someone that I could talk to about certain things that I didn't feel like they were judging me. Okay. And I felt like I can be completely honest with that person. And my therapist, the first session she had, she told me how she did therapy. And she was like, if this doesn't fit you, that's okay. You know, I'll see if I can recommend somebody else for you, but this is how I do therapy. And she's like, I'm very like, you are like a friend to me. I will talk to you as such. But at the same time, like there's obviously a code of ethics and things like that. But if you feel like that's too much for you, and I was like, no, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be so comfortable that I can be so honest with you, almost like a friend, but obviously there's a professional boundary in it. And it's worked out for us. Like, I feel like I can be honest with her and I could talk to her about literally everything that I'm going through. And it's not like, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk to her about, you know, what's happening here in this aspect because she won't understand.
That just hit me. Like I think about like how hard it is to find a partner that works for you, right? Like a partner that's like, okay, I can see this happening lifelong. Like, this is good, right? Luckily, I found you. But like, it took a long time to get to that point, right? I didn't know. First off, I didn't know what I was looking for. And then I went through a situation where I thought I knew what I was looking for, but it wasn't what I needed, right? And then when I finally kind of went through the layers of everything, and I was like, this is, if I could have this, which was like 2 different people in my head, I was like, there's no way that there's this one person in these 2 different thoughts, but here she is, right?
I have a split personality. Yay!
Yeah. But yeah, so like I've taken years to figure it out. And it's more important to have somebody that is going to help you be you as a person, to be your whole self, to be fulfilled. It's more important to find a person that's going to help you do that than it is to find a partner. Like, you should spend so much more time being careful, finding a therapist that is going to be right for you, to be able to make you, to catapult you to the person that you want to be. And I think that's, wow. Like, I never heard somebody say it like that. And I think that, because like when you think about like this whole topic is about how to work on yourself when you're in a relationship, right? When you're in a relationship, it's 2 individuals coming together as one. And if one of the people are broken, it's going to fuck up the relationship.
Right.
There's no way that the relationship is going to have a good dynamic if one person is fucked up. If both people are fucked up, then the relationship is only going to last for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it's toxic from the beginning.
Or not. Or the relationship is going to go forever, and then you're just going to be miserable forever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But if both people have found, you know, the person that has made them whole, the person that has helped them get whole or helped them get fulfilled or helped them be complete, and they come together, then that extra baggage that they're bringing along, like the trauma and stuff, has dissipated. You know, you're actually the 2 people coming together as one. Like that's what it was intended to be.
Right.
The trauma wasn't supposed to be a part of it.
Right.
So yeah, that's great. I think that's a cool thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when we talked about how we can we talked I guess like two ways, right? How we can work together to help ourselves in the relationship, and then how we can also individually work on ourselves in the relationships. Because I think there's certain things that we can do together, and then there's certain things that we need to work on ourselves individually, like that we don't need the other person, or we shouldn't have the other person involved. And I think for me, like I said, that has been therapy, but also recognizing, like, working on myself. I do some of that with you. I do some of that, whether it's like learning your communication style, or learning how to phrase certain things, or learning what gets you upset, or ways that I can, I guess, like, better communicate with you. Like that's working together on those type of things. And then there are certain things that I need to work on myself, like my past traumas. That's not you. That's my past traumas. That's my past relationships, my childhood, that I need to work on myself, so it doesn't affect or influence our relationship, where you're just like, where the fuck is this coming from? And it's like, it's coming from my past relationship, it's coming from my past trauma or my past childhood. So I think it's a combination of both, being able to work on yourself individually, and then recognizing when both of you guys need to work together on issues as well.
Yeah, and it's not always apparent. It's not always obvious. You know, like with working on your past traumas and things that you're going through yourself, there may be some things that you think that you need to work on individually, but then you're like, oh, this person actually should know about this. Right. Because like if the other person is completely unaware, and then all of a sudden you get triggered, then it creates a blow up relationship issue, and they're like, what the fuck happened? Like, you know, and it's really because you didn't go through the motions of healing from that traumatic experience. So relationships have to be customizable, right? Like you're not going to know everything there is to know in the beginning of meeting somebody. And furthermore, in addition to that, you're not going to, like, the person is not going to all of a sudden know exactly what you need, right? So mentioning, oh, like, you know, growing up, you know, my parents fought. The other person can at least say, oh, okay, so this is the type of environment that you were in. So I can see that when we have a disagreement, all of a sudden you're raising your voice. That makes sense to me. There's a line there, like, oh, so this happened before, so this is happening now with us. Like, I get it. I understand why this is happening. But no, I understand it, but it's not okay. We need to work on this. Like, that's a good situation where somebody is aware, but they're not necessarily working through it for you, right? And it's really like an extension, like you're an extension of me, right? Like, I understand up to a certain degree as far as communication, and then you understand, you know, past that. And there's things that I learned from you without you having to tell me. But I learned, like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be raising my voice right now. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, well, maybe I should be a little bit more calm. It's not that serious. Like, I don't have, like, what happens sometimes is people get beholden to their ideas, right? They start identifying to whatever ideas they have, and then they get stuck on that. But it doesn't have to be like that. We are both people that like to learn, right? So at some point when I decided, like, okay, I know nothing. Like, okay, you laugh. You're like, yeah, Polly admits it. No, like there's a point where I was like, I know nothing, and I just want to learn from others. And when I did that, that made me humble in my own thought process. When I think about things and I'm like, this is my idea. Like, if I have an idea, I can also have a counter idea at the same time that goes completely against it. But I'm like, well, if I look at it from this person's perspective, they may have this idea that works for them also. And I'm not trying to make a biased decision. Like, I'm just trying to say, like, what's the whole picture of this situation? So I feel like that's what therapy is. Like, I feel like it's like you can only see a certain amount in front of you. And then the therapist is like, this is an extension of what you're saying to me. Like, you probably didn't see this. And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't see that.
So an example that I can think of within our relationship, when I talked about like working on yourself together and then working on yourself individually. So one of my major triggers is people raising their voice at me. It's just one of those things I automatically shut down when someone raises their voice at me. One of the things that we've worked on is like ways to not, have that trigger happen. But then my therapist, one-on-one individually, we talk about that past trauma of how I was raised and why that triggers me. And so even though we're working on it together, I recognize that I need to work on it individually, because when someone raises their voice at me, I shut down. I leave the conversation. That's it. I don't want to engage anymore. And my therapist then has to help me recognize those triggers, recognize where that's coming from, and then be able to provide me with the tools to still engage in those conversations. And then with us together, we have to work on how not to get to a point where folks are raising their voice at each other. I rarely raise my voice, but like making sure that I'm not triggered by that experience. And then also, how do I still engage in the conversation when Brian decides to raise his voice? So it for me, it's both are important, because at the end of the day, I can work on it with my therapist alone and try to figure out what my triggers are and why I'm triggered by it. But if we don't work on it together and ensure that that triggering incident isn't happening, or how I react to that trigger is not negative, I think it wouldn't work. But because I'm working on it personally and then we're working on it together, I think that's more beneficial than trying to do it separately.
Yeah. And I think that there's something special about giving a certain item focus, like a specific focus. Like I remember when we go back to like budgeting, I know this is like a little bit out there, but like when you go to budgeting, usually you think that, oh yeah, I'm good with my finances. I have money left over at the end of the month. Like things are okay. But when you actually focus on, giving every dollar an allocation, you wind up finding out like, I've been wasting all this money over here for no apparent reason. I don't need to do that. Let me put this money towards this specific thing. And then it pays off my debt faster. It puts me in a better position quicker. Why wouldn't I do that? So it's like, there's something special about like focusing on a specific thing, like saying, hey, we have communication issues, but we have argument issues. And this is what the argument issue is. And this is how I'm going to help it. This is how I'm going to fix it. Right. And I think that that's what people need. Like, it's weird that therapy has been out for so long and we're just getting to that point. We're just getting to a point where people are like, hey, there's different kinds of therapy, Hey, like, you don't have to just keep doing the same traditional sense of therapy. And if you want to get rid of your social anxiety, there's dance therapy for that. Like, what? Like, I didn't know that, and it's weird. It's weird that it takes things so long to get to a point where people are like accepting of it.
Matriculate to the general population.
Yeah. So what are we doing in order to be successful? Like when you go to therapy, and maybe that's just how my mind works, right? Like I'm looking at therapy like, okay, when can I stop seeing your ass? Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to you, but when can I fix this and when can we move on in this part of my life? Like, how is that? Like, when do you win?
I talk to you a lot about what I don't see therapy as. I don't see therapy as crisis management. So it's not to help during a crisis. I see therapy as mental health maintenance and mental health well-being. So you might get your yearly checkup with your doctor, and it's not necessarily just because, and that's physical health. It's not necessarily just because something is wrong. It might be, preventative care, whatever. Okay. I see therapy as that. It's just your oil change that you get every year with your car, or every 6 months, or whatever you're supposed to do.
Every year you're not gonna have a car.
You're supposed to, that oil changes you get is to prevent your car from whatever breaking down. That's how I look at therapy. It's a maintenance of your mental health. So there might be, like, my therapist now, we just talk. There's no crisis in my life. Literally, we are just talking. We might go back and she'll be like, I know you mentioned something about your dad. I know you mentioned something about how you grew up. I knew you mentioned something. And we're connecting the dots. I don't think ever in anyone's life you'll even the greatest, I don't know, inspirational speakers or whatever still seek a therapist. They still seek outside advice, because I don't think us as humans will ever get to a point where like, we're good, I'm perfect, I'm moving on. You'll never get to a point of perfection. You need someone to always maintain your mental health. So you can stop seeing a therapist, but I don't we're done here, I don't think is really the correct term. You could stop and say, I would prefer not to see a therapist anymore. But the idea of there is a conclusion to your mental wellness, I think is a detrimental way to look at your mental health. I think mental health and mental wellness is ever growing, ever developing, ever improving. It's something that is part of you. Your brain and how your brain functions is part of you. It's always going to be part of you. And you need someone that can help in that improvement of your mental health.
Wow. So you're finding a lifelong partner.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So like, when is this done? When are we over? When is this finished? When have I graduated? All that stuff is the wrong way to look at it.
Right.
Okay. So it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, like I told you, when I was in a crisis situation, I was going to my therapist every 2 weeks because I was in crisis mode.
Right.
Now I go to my therapist once a month. I'm positive I would continue to see my therapist for the rest of my life, because life is not perfect. There is always going to be something that I need to talk to my therapist about, that I need an unbiased opinion about, that I need just to vent about, or just to have a discussion about. And my therapist does highs and lows. Unless you you have some sort of mental illness where you don't see any lows in your life, which that's weird. Oh, no, that's not weird. Sorry.
Pretty weird to me. I've never met somebody who's like, I'm always on 10. I'm great. Everything's good. It's like delusional.
Exactly.
Stupid.
Right.
Do you know how hard life is, motherfucker? Do you know what's going on?
But there's always going to be highs and lows in your life. And we talk about those highs and lows. Like the month that I see her, she's like, tell me about the highs and lows of the past month. And I'll tell her some highs, and then I'll tell her some lows, and then we'll discuss it. Highs, we have the same amount of conversation about my highs as we have about my lows. So therefore, it's not a crisis thing. It's like, I just want to talk to you about what's going on. And then she's able to pull at that. You said, you got a raise. I know you've been really looking forward to that raise. I know, like, it's literally someone you're talking to that like has been following your growth, has been following your improvement, has been following your struggle, that's able to like recognize these things in an unbiased manner. And when did I talk to her? Like, last week I talked to my therapist, and I didn't have any real lows. I've had maybe one low, and we talked about the trip I took with my staff retreat and how I thought I was going to have anxiety about it. And we had a discussion about that. So it's like, it's really just.
That was like a sweet and low, because you went on vacation and.
Oh, babe.
Yeah. I get it. That's so like the question shouldn't be like, when are you finished?
Right.
It really is like, how important is it for you to maintain your mental health?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not ever going to be like, it's only important for 6 months. And then after that, like,
right. I don't care what the rails. Right. Like, yeah. I don't care about my mental health after that. You always should care. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's cool how you describe it too, because I haven't heard it explained like that, but it really just seems like you have an advocate, somebody in your corner saying like, hey, like, this was important to you. Is it still important to you? Like, is this still something that you're going through in your life? Or is this something you want to keep talking about? This is something that I think that you should really talk about and focus on, because these other things that you're experiencing all have to do with this certain thing.
Right.
It's like, damn, how do you know that?
Right.
It's like almost they become like a psychic or something.
Right. And I when you talked about us renaming therapy as healing, I don't think there's ever a point where you say I'm healed, I'm completely done. Right. Some things are always going to trigger you. So this person is helping in your journey of healing.
Okay.
So that's just like you were saying, oh, let's pivot to this new topic, because we might not recognize that something that we thought we had, quote unquote, healed from, maybe somehow affecting us, maybe somehow dipping into other parts of our lives, and being able to have someone that recognizes like, you talked about X, Y, and Z. Do you think that has anything to do with your past relationship or what you're friend had said to you about whatever, it seems like you are pulling from that past experience and making it into your present experience. So it's a healing journey, because I don't believe we ever get to a point of a healing journey where we're done.
With that being said, I believe that talk therapy is the most effective type of therapy. Like after you've illustrated that, because like think about it, right? Like you're talking about like dance therapy, and that's your body, right? But your body is showing, like sending signals to your what?
Brain.
To your brain, right? You're going through life depressed, upset, angry, whatever it is, because of your traumatic experience, because of your what?
Brain.
That's it. Like everything starts at your brain.
I thought I was going to get that question wrong. I was like,
oh shit.
I didn't know I was going to be tested. God
the
damn
first
it.
test was good. The second test, I wasn't quite apparent.
Oh my God.
Please say the same thing.
I went the same answer.
But yeah, like everything starts at your brain, and then everything else trickles down from that. Like everything that you do, like action wise, is because of what you were thinking, right? Every thought that you have becomes an action, and those actions show who that person is because of how they think. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I think that healing your brain is the most important thing. And if that's the most important thing, then talk therapy has to be it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think dancing is going to help with that. The writing will help, might help you cope.
Yeah.
But it's not going to help give you an understanding for what the hell happened.
Right.
And it's not going to be able to give you other perspectives on, oh, well, this is something that could be right. Like, it's not going to do that. So I do think that like the fact that you have another human being sitting there that is a professional, that has a history of clients, of people that have gone through the same thing, that they have years worth of education and are able to really help you, or in a position to help you and be your advocate. A good therapist will be the difference, I think.
That's very true. I don't think it is generalizable and just saying find a therapist. You definitely need to find a good therapist.
Yeah, but in sales, it's definitely like you need the whole thing. Like you need, like in sales, there's a thing called a compliance ladder, right? And what that means is like you want to get a small yes and then build your way up to a larger yes, right? So it's like when you meet with a client, it's like, oh, can you sign your name here? They sign their name. Okay, and your address? They sign their address, right? It's like small thing, but bigger thing. But the bigger thing, the next thing you know is like, how much can you afford, right? It's a huge question. But if you go up the compliance ladder and they give you yes, 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 then there's no reason why they couldn't, give you that information at that point. But with therapy, it's the same thing. If you tell me, hey, do you want to listen to music or make you feel good? That's kind of a yes. Like, that's kind of like, yeah, I love music. I love feeling good. Why would I do this? It's an easy yes. So it's like you have to start at like a very like small yes and build your way up to the, okay, let's go talk to somebody. Because like you said, there's a stigma behind therapy.
Right.
And people are just like, look, I don't need no help, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's what we're trying to do, like with therapy now. It's like, why are we calling a therapist? You got to see a doctor. You got to take pills. Like, why are we doing that? Why not we say like, hey, you're going to be able to heal. You're going to be able to talk to somebody that's a friend, that's an advocate, somebody that's in your corner. Those are all different, like compliance ladder things. Like you're making it not a big deal. And it's really not. Like when you look at it, like what we're talking about, where it's like, this is something that is going to improve you for the rest of your life. This is something that is going to maintain your mental health in a positive way. This is going to be a support system for you. All those things are like, well, sign me up. Like that's what it is. So I think that this was insightful.
Okay, well, that concludes today's episode. We want you to do 3 things before we leave. The first is to like us on Instagram at the 1024. The second is to follow or share our podcast with a friend. And the third is
to remember to love God, family, and yourself always and in all ways. Take care.
All right. Bye.